All right. Welcome, everybody, to the burnout panel discussion for February. So, we are so excited about this topic. This was something that was brought up to us during our last monthly discussion, and this is about saying no effectively. This is a sexy topic. Saying no and boundaries are very sexy topics. People like to say the words a lot, they like to talk about it a lot. But what about actually doing it? That's when it gets a little bit complicated. So, the reason we wanted to talk about this is it's something that comes up in a lot of levels of organizations. This is something that you may be struggling with as a manager, as a team leader, in the corporate setting in general. If you're an entrepreneur, you're going to be running into this all the time. If you are on a team, you may be running into this. So this is something we want to make sure we cover on multiple levels. And there's going to be so much juicy stuff from everybody on the panel today. So as a general reason why saying no is important, because without it, this is where things start to go south. This is where you start to court burnout. And as we were talking about earlier, nobody wants to date burnout. Nobody wants it, nobody wants that relationship. So people think about people think about boundaries as building these brick walls, and it's going to create this distance between me and other people. It's going to create instant conflict. It comes right into our hardwired sense of belonging. If I say no, I'm going to create a distance. It's going to get me kicked out of the village, or it's going to make somebody else feel bad. It puts us in this either or, either I win or they win. There can be a power struggle feeling here. This is something that is going to make you have to admit that you're a human being with limitations. You don't have endless amounts of energy to just give away to whatever you want. You actually have to prioritize and be able to communicate those priorities. So let's jump into the actual solutions of the no. And I think that we'll develop as we go along more reasons as to why saying no and creating these boundaries is super important to get us as far away from burnout as possible. I think go ahead, jump in.
I don't know if we want to intro ourselves. We've done a lot of these, so I think everyone can just pop over to our LinkedIn pages. But my name's Aileen, and I'm going to kind of start from a place of before we talk about the strategies for saying no, which my colleagues have excellent resources and tips and tools to do. How do we kind of look at that prevention, like we talk about being proactive about this? So my strategy is turning inward to create more awareness of your limits. So you're not setting yourself up to only start saying no when you're already taking on or have taken on more than you can handle. So like Audrey said, I think there's some shame and stigma around, like, we expect we're superhuman, superheroes, and that we can just take on everything. But we all are human. We all have a maximum capacity. So creating a little more space for stillness, for silence, for just checking in with yourself to even know, am I starting to feel overwhelmed? We were chatting before we went live about starting to get a little of that texture of overwhelm. So when we can notice that and create the space to really be sniffing it out in advance before we're completely overtired, overburdened, overworked, exhausted, burnt out, then we can integrate some more of the strategies we'll talk about today effectively. Because if we're already in that place, we're going to have less bandwidth, less cognitive faculties, and then what can be a hard conversation will feel that much harder. So I think Dr. Sharon wanted to piggyback on that, and we'll keep chatting from there.
Awesome. Thank you, Aileen. And I'm Dr. Sharon Grossman, the burnout doc. And I think of this like any other thing. I think there's always two things that you want to look at. One is the tactical of like, how do I say no, right? Like maybe there's some script that will allow you to have just like more ease with this idea of like, okay, now I have something to follow. But I think the other piece, which is huge, is mindset. So if you're a manager and you really need to say no to other people, it can be challenging because you want to be seen as helpful. You want to accommodate your team members, but it's also crucial to establish some boundaries and make decisions that align with your team's goals and priorities. So to do so, what I'd like to share is that it's important to actively listen to the request and take into consideration factors such as, what are the resources that I have available to me? And resources can be your time, your energy, but it can also be like other factors. The impact on other team members, the potential consequences of saying yes or no, because either one of those, there's always consequences to be really thoughtful of. And be sure to communicate clearly and honestly with the person who's putting the request out there, and then explain your decision and provide any sort of alternative options if you are going to say no, or maybe suggestions that may be helpful. So sometimes it's, well, I'm not available to do this, but you might ask so and so, or I can't do this right now, but I'll be available this afternoon or next week. So kind of having those kinds of alternatives is really helpful. And so with that, I'd like to pass the baton to one of our other experts, because we have so much that we would like to share. So who would like to go next?
I'll jump in. My name is Kate Donovan. I am the host of Fried the Burnout podcast. And one of the things that I like to teach people is to build boundaries, say no by being a brat, B-R-A-T, brat. Now, B stands for beliefs or believe, R stands for resources, A stands for abilities, and T stands for trust. And by using one of or a combination of these words, you can formulate boundaries that empower other people. So you end up getting a win-win at the end of the day. So say there's somebody at your office who's constantly writing to you to ask you for numbers from a spreadsheet that you have access to. And it's not really your job to give them those numbers. They could get those numbers another way, but they keep asking you and you keep answering. So you've created this unspoken agreement with this person that they're going to ask you for the numbers and you're going to provide the numbers. But you notice every time their email comes in, you start rolling your eyes and huffing because you're feeling resentful that you have to provide them with these numbers. And so it's time to create some space there. You can say to this person, hey, I know that I've done this in the past. Here is the resource that you'll need to do this in the future. I trust that you have the ability to use this well, and move on, right? So if you use these words, beliefs, resources, abilities, and trust in some way, shape, or form in your boundary statements, you'll find that they help to give the person who's asking you for something their power back to use their own resources. You'll be increasing the level of trust on your team because you're telling people, I believe in you, I trust you, I know your abilities. So this is a nice way to sort of hand things back over without being like, no, you know?
Yeah, I love that, Kate. And I also love that when you set that boundary, when you said, no, I'm not going to give this information, and the way you responded to it, you said, yes, I'm going to give you an opportunity to be self-sufficient, right?
Yes.
So one of the things I think is really important for us to hold on to, particularly when these no's make us feel like stressed and like we're going to be kicked off the team or the team's not going to like us, that every time we say no to something, we're also saying yes to something else. And we want to get real intentional about what we're saying yes to and what we're saying no to. So the yes, we can take this on means no, we can't do this other thing over here. And you can also involve people, right, in that discussion around, if we say yes to this, what does this mean about this? If you're a team leader, you want to have that big picture. How am I keeping this in the flow of the big picture, so that as we're saying no, right, or yes, what is the opposite? What is the thing that's complementing the yes or the no, right? They happen simultaneously. So you don't actually have to ever be in a pull. You can actually recognize, right, that there's a no and a yes happening, and what are they, and just be present with them and figure out what's the best way to prioritize. I think Vanessa has some thoughts about this too.
I would like to say, at the end of the day, folks, you just got to be selfish. And it sounds bad, but ultimately, here's the thing. You can't show up for people if you're in the hospital, dehydrated, on the floor, can't move. You just can't show up for other people. And if you are heading in that direction, then what good are you to anybody else? What good are you to yourself? So it starts with you. You got to show up for you so you can show up for other people. Because guess what? An empty cup of water cannot share water with another cup. If you run out of water in the cup, what water are you going to give? You don't give any more water. So you just got to be selfish, folks. And it's okay to be selfish. It's okay to look out for number one. Because that person who asked you for that request, guess what? They were looking out for number one. I know, sad to say, but they were looking out for themselves. They said to themselves, you know what? I want that request done. So they asked you because they knew you weren't going to say no. Because they know you better than yourself. They knew you were going to say no. So what they said was, well, I know such and such is going to say yes. So let me just ask them. I dare you to surprise them this week. I dare you to surprise them and say no. Period. There's no explanation. There's no my sister needs me to do this. There's no my cousin's in the hospital. There's no, oh, my car broke down. Just say no, period. And then return your face to your screen and continue writing that email. I dare you. I dare you.
I think this really goes back to that mindset piece where we have to get around this idea that saying no is bad, or that people are going to judge us, or that we're not good managers and our job is always to take care of everybody else. I think we have to really embrace the idea that it's okay for us to, as you said, to put ourselves in that number one spot. And what I actually see with a lot of my clients is that they're often doing amazing things in the world in order to make the world a better place and to make sure that everybody's happy and taken care of. I just had a session with a client who was like, yeah, I started this business because when I was project manager, I was miserable and I wanted to create an environment where people are really happy at work and then they can provide for their families and go home and have a nice life. And I'm like, and what about you? Because he's the one working 7 days a week trying to make this happen, right? And he's like, oh yeah, look, that doesn't apply to me. So it starts with you. It has to start with you, right? And it's always about like looking at that mindset piece. What are you telling yourself that's getting in the way of being able to say no? And often there's some sort of, I should be doing more, I'm not doing enough, and I feel guilty and I don't deserve. So look for those kinds of statements because those are going to be blocking you. And when you can eliminate those, it's a lot easier to then follow whatever formulas like the BRAT method to be able to stand your ground. And I do just want to let people know that I have to bounce off, but you've got 5 other amazing women that are going to continue this. So I will see you all next time. Thank you so much.
Just to jump on that, I think that came back to the creating some space. She mentioned looking at those statements, but there has to be kind of an ability to zoom out and do some self-reflection to start to notice any of those trends, that language, the deprioritization of self. So some strategies on creating some space. One would be, just for anyone listening, I'll invite you to take a little inventory of your day-to-day, even look at your calendar. How much white space is there? If it's just all the color coding, can't relate at all, back to back to back, I'm going to guess, just an educated guess, you don't have a little space for that zooming out, that forest from the trees. So it doesn't have to be an hour a day. You don't have to be meditating, for forever. You don't have to really change your life around drastically to create that space. So it can really fit in with whatever the realities of your life are. It might be if you're a parent and you're a business owner and you're whatever, and the only time you have space for yourself is when you get to take a shower, take a long shower. And that's not the most environmentally friendly recommendation, but if that's what time you get, take that time. And without the phone, without other people, hopefully you get, beat to yourself there. You might be able to start to check in and just see, like, scan from the crown of your head to your toes. How am I feeling in my physical body? I think Dr. Sandra shows that there's a lot of clues and data there. And then check in on that emotional, mental front too. So see at your calendar, is there any white space? And where might you even have 2 minutes a day to start to turn inward? Because that's going to influence all your outward actions.
And I would just like to say, all these emotions that you're feeling, they are your friend. Please do not kick them to the curb and act like they do not exist. They are here to help you do the right thing for you and everybody else. It's just like Vanessa said, you go in there broken, falling down. You're not helping anybody. You're not helping you. So if you feel a real no to this thing, you got to tune into that, because that's telling you there's a problem here. There's something that needs to be solved. Now, the problem could be that you're questioning yourself as a leader. That just means you're going to get some coaching. Somebody's going to help you. You're going to feel better as a leader. The problem could be you're also recognizing you don't have enough resources to do this thing. Well, we can do this later when we have resources, but do not kick your emotions to the curb. They are there to help you. Make friends with everyone. They are a superpower. They are 1,000 superpowers. Do not leave them behind. Wear your cape, emotions on it.
And you know me, I love resentment is your superpower because that's my best-selling keynote and the thing I love to talk about most. But Gabor Mate says something in a few of his books that he said he didn't even make up. He got from a therapist that said when you are stuck in a boundary situation and the decision that you have to make is either going to leave you feeling guilty or feeling resentful. So either you're going to say yes and you're going to feel resentful toward that person, or you're going to say no and you're going to feel guilty about saying no. Sometimes this is the double bind we find ourselves in, right? So it's not so easy just to, because either way we're going to feel terrible. But every time these two emotions come up, if you're left with a choice between guilt and resentment, go guilt every time. Because resentment will continue to eat at you and eat at you and eat at you and eat at you. And what happens with when you choose guilt is that most frequently you'll see that people made it through without you. So another reason that we don't say no, and back to Sharon's ideas about mindset, is that we have a hard time sometimes thinking that people are going to be okay without our help. And if they don't need our help, then we have this sort of internal, or maybe I won't say we, I'll say I. When they don't need our help, I have this sort of internal monster that says, if they don't need you, you're not worthy. You're not valuable. So we've attached our value to being able to jump in and help people when we can. So saying no, first of all, feels guilty. Second of all, feels like we could be excluded from everything. If we're not necessary, then we don't matter, right? So this game between guilt and resentment, go guilt. First of all, choose guilt because you can handle that better. And also, the more you practice doing that, the easier it will be for you to believe that other people are doing it too. Like so and so is always going to say yes, so I have to say yes. But when we start treating each other like adults and saying this person will say no if they want to, it means you'll be more apt and more open to asking people for help when you need it, because sometimes boundaries are about putting up fences, but sometimes boundaries are about opening gates and letting people in and asking for help. So you'll feel less guilty asking for help if you say no when other people ask for help sometimes, because you'll trust that people will be able to say no to you if they can't do it. Does that make sense? I know that was kind of a lot of ideas in a short period of time, but they all kept running through my head as we were talking and I needed to get them all out there.
Yeah, I love that, Kate. And I will introduce myself also. My name is Audrey Holst, and I'm the founder of Fortitude and Flow. And guilt is a huge one that comes up a lot. And I love that perspective. If we look at the neuroscience around a lot of these things, why we behave the way we do, and even the feelings that we have about certain stuff, right? It's normal. Our bodies are doing what they think is the right thing for us. It's following the pathways that were found to be most efficient for us at some point. And that's the thing to understand is sometimes we start to have these opinions about ourselves for feeling a certain way. Just like Dr. Sandra was saying, right? Like we have all of these different feelings that come through. And when we fight them, we actually start draining our own energy, because this is information, right? This is really important for us to understand. So our body does what it thinks is most efficient. And when we start to create change, just like when we're starting to say no, or we're starting to create a boundary, the natural reaction from our bodies and our nervous system is to have some resistance to it, because it takes more energy. If you have a pathway of guilt, then guilt is the easiest thing for your body to go through. It's the easiest feeling. It's wired that way. So when you start to create changes in that, your body is going to say, whoa, 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 hey, this is asking more resources than what we're used to expending here. That's normal. So you'll go through this discomfort, uncomfortable feeling, which is normal. It's going to feel uncomfortable. And if you can get on board with that discomfort and realize, oh, the discomfort is actually just my body rewiring a new pathway that can make going through all of these different strategies that folks are talking about way easier.
And the discomfort, I love that, Audrey. The discomfort is also a signal that I'm learning something new. I'm growing. I'm stretching a little bit. I'm expanding my comfort zone. You don't have to step out of your zone. You just can add things to it. And as you add things to it, you start to feel like, okay, something new here. I got to work with it. So giving yourself permission to be all right with the discomfort is incredibly important.
Fantastic. Oh, don't I know some amazing people here with these tips, the burnout panel on saying no effectively, right? So we talked about first tuning inward. Are you feeling guilt? Are you feeling resentment? Are you feeling doubt? What are the emotions that you have within you? And really sit down with them and explore the why behind them. And then look outwardly, look at what's happening outside in terms of your leadership preference. Look at what's happening in terms of, do you feel empowered? Do you feel like your team is respecting you? Do you feel as though you're respecting you, right? Because then step number 3 is take the lead. Take the lead and respect thyself. Whether you're using the BRAT framework that Kate mentioned earlier in the video in this episode, and if you didn't hear it, rewind, hear it again, or right, whether you're using other tools to ensure that you have that sense of agency for yourself, where you are taking care of number 1, which is you, so you can show up for other people. Okay, and then step number 4, ensure it doesn't happen again. What are things you can put in place to make sure and ensure that you are saying no effectively always and forever, and that you are not continuing to, and it was what was it that that Aileen had said earlier, where she said that texture of overwhelm, to ensure that you're not feeling that texture of overwhelm. Yes, indeed. Love it. So if you have any questions for us, type it in the chat. Absolutely. And in terms of the burnout panel, right? So we are here not only on LinkedIn to provide you with tips every month, but we are also here a panel of 6 amazing experts who are here to deliver and help your team and your company grow by ensuring that you are eradicating burnout, you are preventing the burnout, or you are solving for the burnout that is currently existing in your team, to ensure that you are more productive as a leader, you are more productive as a manager, you are more productive as an employee, because when your individuals are more productive, the collective is more productive, and the growth can occur, and the abundance is what awaits each and every one and each and every collective that happens. And that is why we are here doing what we are doing, showing up every month for you. Oh, my name's Vanessa Zammy, by the way, and I ignite enterprise evolution. I never intro myself. Yes, I ignite enterprise evolution by emboldening women nationwide to lead prosperous community enterprises. And I'm here as part of the burnout panel because we are here on a mission to ensure that everyone is thriving. Everyone is thriving. Okay. Everyone is thriving. And we are going to be back here next month as well, too, to share with you more insights and actionable tips on how you can combat the biggest issues on burnout. Yes. Chat with you all later.